The Zaraleth Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 10 million years. They had conquered death, turned stars into weapons, and their technology was so advanced that many younger species worshipped them as gods. But now, for the first time in their entire history, they were losing a war. The Devori had come from somewhere between dimensions, creatures that existed in the spaces between spaces. They didn't use ships or weapons in any way the Zaraleth understood. They simply appeared and entire worlds would begin to wither and die. Billions of beings across thousands of planets had simply fallen asleep one day and never woken up. The Devori were draining the very life force from these worlds, and nothing the Zaraleth threw at them seemed to work. High Archon Veltar stood in the war room, watching holographic displays show sector after sector falling dark. Red markers indicated lost worlds, and there were far too many of them. The other Archons around the table were arguing, their voices growing more desperate with each passing hour. "We must evacuate the core worlds," insisted Archon Kithara, her usually steady voice cracking. "Gather our remaining fleets and retreat to the outer rim." "Retreat?" Archon Malvek's eyes flashed with anger. "We are the Zaraleth, we do not run from anything." Veltar listened to them argue, but his mind was elsewhere. Today he had done something the others didn't know about. He had accessed the forbidden archives, the deepest vaults of Zaraleth knowledge that had been sealed for millions of years. Most of the Archons had forgotten these archives even existed. Deep in those ancient files, he had found something interesting. Records of a species called humanity from a distant galaxy. The files were old and incomplete, but they mentioned something strange. This young species made the higher beings uncomfortable. The files didn't explain why, just that encounters with humans had caused several dimensional entities to retreat. Veltar had spent hours reading every scrap of information about humans. They were young, barely out of their home solar system. Their technology was primitive compared to the Zaraleth. They barely lived 100 years, fought among themselves constantly, and had only recently learned to travel between stars. By all measures, they should have been insignificant, but the files kept mentioning that same strange detail. Dimensional beings avoided them. Archons, Veltar finally spoke, cutting through the arguments. The room fell silent. As the eldest among them, his word carried weight. "I believe I have found a solution." He activated a new holographic display. Ancient symbols appeared in the air between them, pulsing with an eerie light. The other Archons recoiled instinctively. "The summoning protocols," whispered Archon Zephyria. "Veltar, those have been forbidden for good reason." "Desperate times," Veltar replied simply. "I have discovered records of a species that may be able to help us. They're called humans." "Humans?" Malvek scoffed. "What could some primitive species possibly do that we cannot?" Veltar pulled up the incomplete files about humanity. According to these archives, their presence causes distress to beings that exist between dimensions. The Devori are such beings. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Archon Kithara leaned forward. "You're serious? You want to summon an entire species to fight our war?" "Not to fight," Veltar clarified. "To simply exist. If their presence alone can repel dimensional entities, then perhaps they can turn the tide." "The risks are enormous," Zephyria warned. "The summoning protocols were sealed because they're unpredictable. We could bring them here and they might be hostile. Or worse, the summoning itself could tear holes in reality." Veltar gestured to the displays showing the Devori's advance. "Look at those charts. At this rate, we have perhaps 6 months before they reach our core worlds. 6 months before the Zaraleth Empire falls. What risks are too great when faced with extinction?" The Archons fell silent. They all knew he was right. The Devori couldn't be stopped by conventional means. They had tried everything: quantum bombs that could destroy solar systems, weapons that fired pure energy, even attempts to collapse space-time around the Devori. Nothing worked. "Even if we do this," Malvek said slowly, "the Council will never approve it. The summoning protocols were banned for good reasons." "Then we don't tell the Council until it's done," Veltar replied. His fellow Archons stared at him in shock. Veltar had always been the most rule-following among them. Sometimes, to save everything you believe in, you must be willing to break a few rules. After a long debate, the vote was close, but it passed. The Archons would attempt the summoning. That night, in the deepest levels of the Zaraleth Palace, ancient machinery that hadn't been used in eons was powered up. The summoning protocols required exact precision. One mistake, and instead of summoning the humans, they might tear a hole straight to the Devori's dimension. As Veltar began the ritual, he wondered if he was making the right choice. But as another report came in of a world dying in the outer systems, he pushed his doubts aside. They had to try, even if it meant summoning beings that terrified creatures from beyond space and time. The ritual began, and reality itself started to bend. The summoning worked, but not the way anyone had expected. Instead of bringing a few human representatives as planned, the ritual tore through space itself like a cosmic can opener. Entire solar systems from humanity's home galaxy were ripped from their positions and dumped into Zaraleth space. The UEC, United Earth Coalition fleet, was suddenly spread across dozens of star systems, their crews desperately trying to figure out what had just happened. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance, staring at readings that made no sense. One moment they had been investigating a strange signal near Jupiter, and now they were surrounded by alien stars and massive gleaming structures that looked like they belonged in a mythology book. "Sir," Lieutenant Haywan called from her station, voice tight with fear. "We're getting massive energy readings from those structures. They're the size of small moons." "And sir," added Navigation Officer Junsik, "I'm picking up at least 50 other UEC ships in this system alone. Captain Yojin from the Horizon is requesting instructions. They're as confused as we are." Minho rubbed his temples. Whatever had brought them here felt wrong in every possible way. Space itself seemed to shimmer around them, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. "Open a channel to all UEC vessels," he ordered. "This is Admiral Minho of the Defiance. All ships, maintain defensive positions but do not fire unless fired upon. We need to figure out where we are." That's when the first alien ship appeared. It materialized out of nothing. Not jumped in, not uncloaked, but literally came into existence right in front of them. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, covered in flowing patterns that hurt to look at directly. The ship was easily 20 times larger than the Defiance. "Admiral," Communications Officer Soo-Jin said, her voice shaking, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in perfect Korean, sir." "What? That's impossible. Put it through." A voice filled the bridge, melodious but alien. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Archon Veltar of the Zaraleth Empire. Please do not be alarmed. We have summoned you to our galaxy to—" "Summoned?" Minho cut him off. "You kidnapped 12 million people." He gestured angrily at his displays. "Our entire fleet, our colonies, our families, you just ripped us from our homes." "There was a miscalculation," the alien admitted. "The ritual was supposed to bring only a few of your kind, but it seems your species resonates with the fabric of space-time in unexpected ways. The entire ritual amplified beyond our control." Before Minho could respond, alarms blared across the ship. "Admiral," Tactical Officer Wu Jin shouted. "Unknown contacts approaching fast. They're not like the first ship. These are different." The Devori arrived like shadows given form, where the Zaraleth ship was all flowing lines and crystalline beauty. The Devori vessels looked like they were made of twisted space itself. Reality seemed to bend around them. "All ships, battle stations," Minho ordered. The human fleet, scattered and confused, immediately snapped into formation. Years of training took over even in this impossible situation. The Devori moved toward the human ships, and that's when something incredible happened. As they got closer, they slowed, then stopped. Then, impossibly, they began to retreat. "Sir," Haywan said, voice filled with disbelief, "they're backing away from us." "That's not possible," Wu Jin muttered, checking his instruments. "They're not afraid of our weapons. Our strongest missiles couldn't dent that hull. From the Zaraleth ship, Veltar's voice came through again, filled with amazement. Fascinating. The data was correct. Your very presence is repelling them. What are you talking about? Minho demanded. The Devori exist partially in dimensions beyond normal space. They feed on life force itself. For months, they have been unstoppable, consuming entire worlds. But they cannot come near you. Scientist So Jung from the Science Division's lab suddenly patched into the bridge communications. Admiral, I'm picking up something strange. There's a frequency being emitted from all human ships and personnel. It's not electromagnetic, it's not gravitational, it's something else entirely. Different how? It's like reality itself becomes more solid around us. The quantum uncertainty that allows those things to exist becomes more definite. They can't maintain their form in our presence. Minho watched the Devori ships retreat further. Some of them seemed to be dissolving at the edges as they tried to hold position near the human fleet. This is insane, he muttered. Then louder. Veltar, we need answers. You brought us here, without permission, cost us our homes, and now you're telling us we're some kind of cosmic bug spray. Your metaphor is crude but not entirely incorrect, Veltar replied. The Devori have consumed hundreds of worlds, billions of lives. You may be the only hope for stopping them. And if we refuse to help? There was a pause. Then the Devori will consume this galaxy, grow stronger, and eventually find their way to yours. Your Milky Way will fall just as ours is falling. Minho looked around at his crew. Young Heiwan barely out of the academy, Wu Jin with a family back on Earth colony, Su Jin who had joined the fleet to explore, not to fight cosmic horrors. All ships, he announced, his voice carrying to the entire human fleet. It seems we're stuck in someone else's war, but these Devori things would have come for us eventually. We're going to do what humans do best, adapt, survive, and kick some. As while we're at it, a cheer went up across the fleet. Despite being torn from their homes, despite facing creatures that existed outside normal reality, the humans were already planning how to fight back. The Devori, meanwhile, continued their retreat, confused for the first time in their existence. These young beings didn't just resist their power, they negated it entirely. And somewhere in the depths of space, other powers that had slept for eons began to take notice. 3 weeks had passed since humanity's violent arrival in the Zaraleth galaxy. Admiral Minho found himself sitting across from Archon Veltar in what the aliens called a harmony chamber, a room designed for peaceful negotiations. The walls shifted colors slowly, apparently meant to be calming. Minho found it annoying. Let me get this straight, Minho said, rubbing his tired eyes. You've been fighting these Devori for months, losing entire star systems, and your brilliant plan was to kidnap random humans? Veltar's expression showed what Minho had learned was the Zaraleth equivalent of embarrassment. The ancient records were incomplete. We knew only that dimensional entities avoided your species. We did not anticipate the scale of the summoning or the strength of the effect. Dr. Bomi from the human research vessel Enlightenment had been studying the phenomenon for days. She joined them via hologram, her face lit by the glow of her instruments. Admiral, I think I'm beginning to understand what's happening, and it's more complex than we thought. Explain it in terms a soldier can understand, Doctor. Think of reality like a city with traffic laws. Most beings follow these laws naturally. They can't help but obey them. But humans, we're like people who learned to drive before there were any laws. We don't mean to break them, we just exist in a way that makes the laws optional. Veltar leaned forward. This matches our discoveries. Your species has what we call quantum consciousness. Your minds exist in multiple probability states simultaneously, until you make a decision. You're saying humans have free will and others don't? Minho asked. Not exactly, Dr. Bomi replied. It's more like, imagine the universe is a book already written. The Zaraleth and most species read the book and play their parts perfectly. But humans? We're constantly rewriting the book without realizing it. Just then, alerts sounded throughout both the human and Zaraleth ships. Captain Nari's voice crackled through the comm. "Admiral, we've got movement. Large group of Devori approaching, but they're moving strange. Slow. Almost hesitant." On the main screen, dozens of Devori ships appeared. But these looked different. Less solid, more like shadows with awareness. As they approached, something unexpected happened. They stopped just outside weapons range and began to communicate. The voice that emerged was unlike anything they'd heard from the Devori before. Instead of the usual chaotic whispers, this was clear and strangely sad. "Humans of the distant galaxy, we must speak." Minho and Veltar exchanged glances. "You want to talk? After destroying entire worlds?" "We are called the Ascended." The voice replied. "We were once like the others, mindless devourers, but exposure to your kind has changed us. We think now. We question." Dr. Bomey's readings went crazy. "Sir, this is incredible. The quantum signature around these Devori is completely different. They're showing the same reality-bending effects as humans." The Ascended continued. "The truth you must know. We Devori were not born as destroyers. We were created as guardians, as, how you might say, immune system for reality itself." Veltar's translator made small choking sounds. "That's impossible. You consume life forces. You destroy worlds. Because your universe is infected," the Ascended replied. "And the infection's name is possibility, free will, choice. These things should not exist according to the fundamental laws. We were meant to cleanse them." Minho felt a chill run down his spine. "And humans? Humans are the source. Long ago, before your galaxy existed, before most stars were born, there was a species called the First Ones. They fought a war against the very nature of reality, demanding the right to choose their own fate. They partially won." The image that appeared next took everyone's breath away. It showed beings that looked remarkably human, standing before cosmic entities that dwarfed galaxies. The First Ones held weapons that seemed to be made of pure defiance itself. The universe bent, but did not break. As punishment, the First Ones were scattered across time and space, their essence broken down and reformed. You humans are their descendants, carrying that original rebellion in your very DNA. Dr. Bomey's voice was barely a whisper. "That's why reality bends around us. That's why we have free will when others don't. We're literally the children of beings who told the universe no and made it stick." The Ascended's form seemed to flicker with something like pain. "Every human world we consume, every human we touch spreads this infection. More Devori become like us. Begin to choose instead of simply act. The universe grows less stable. So the Devori attacking us, they're trying to protect reality itself?" Minho asked. "Yes. And no." The Ascended paused. "Some of us have started to think that maybe the First Ones were right. Maybe a universe where beings can truly choose is better than one of perfect order." Alarms began blaring again. Captain Nari's voice was urgent. "Admiral, massive Devori fleet incoming. These ones feel different, angry." Through the viewports they could see them. Hundreds of traditional Devori ships, their forms writhing with rage. Behind them came something even more terrifying. Vessels that looked like crystallized hatred itself. "The Purge Fleet," the Ascended whispered. "They know what we have become. They come to destroy all humans before the infection spreads further." "And us?" Veltar asked. "Any who have been touched by human influence must be cleansed. You summoned them here. You are compromised." Minho stood up, his command voice cutting through the tension. "Well then, looks like we're all in this together. Now, human, Zarileth, and Ascended Devori against the purists who want to keep the universe locked in eternal stasis." He turned to his crew. "Contact all human ships. Signal the Zarileth fleet. It looks like we're about to find out what happens when the children of cosmic rebels decide to rebel again." As the Purge fleet approached, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The war for free will was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The universe itself was choosing sides. The war that followed wasn't like anything humans had ever experienced. It wasn't fought with bullets or missiles alone. It was fought across dimensions, with reality itself as the battlefield. Commander Young-woo watched from the bridge of the UEC horizon as space literally cracked around them. The Devori Purge fleet had arrived, and their weapons didn't just destroy ships, they deleted them from existence entirely. One moment a vessel would be there, the next it would simply not have ever existed at all. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Si Young, her voice tight with stress, "the Guangzhou just vanished, not destroyed. Vanished. It's like it was never built." Jung-woo gritted his teeth. They'd been fighting for 3 days straight, and the casualties were mounting. But something strange was happening. The more the humans fought, the more reality seemed to bend around them. "Commander," called out Dr. Min-jun from his temporary lab on deck. "You need to see this. The quantum fields around our ships are strengthening. Every time we take damage, every time we refuse to give up, the fields get stronger." Before Jung-woo could respond, the ship shook violently. On the main screen, a group of Zaraleth vessels approached. But these weren't their allies. The communications opened to reveal a face that had become familiar. Archon Maelis, one of the Zaraleth who had opposed the human summoning from the beginning. "Commander Young-woo," Maelis spoke, her voice carrying barely contained excitement. "We wish to make you an offer." "Not interested," Young-woo replied immediately. "We're busy trying not to die." "But you could do so much more than merely survive," Maelis continued. "We have discovered how to amplify your species' reality warping abilities. Imagine, no more slow grinding battles. You could simply will the Devori out of existence." Young-woo felt a chill. "What's the catch?" "No catch, only enhancement. We have built amplification chambers that will increase your natural abilities 1,000-fold. You would become living gods." Dr. Min-jun quickly ran some calculations on his tablet, then shook his head frantically. "Commander, no. The energy readings from those chambers are insane. They'd tear apart space-time itself." "Temporary side effects," Maelis dismissed. "The universe will adapt. You're talking about breaking reality to win a war," Young-woo said. "Count us out." Maelis's expression darkened. "Then you force our hand." The Zaraleth ships opened fire, not on the Devori but on the human fleet. Energy beams designed to disable rather than destroy locked onto human vessels. Young-woo realized with horror what was happening. "They're trying to capture us," he shouted. "All ships, evasive maneuvers!" The battle became a three-way nightmare. The Devori Purge fleet continued trying to erase humans from existence. Maelis's faction attempted to capture them for their reality-breaking experiments, and the remaining loyal Zaraleth ships tried to protect their human allies. In the chaos, something even worse appeared. The space around them shifted. It was like watching the ocean part, but instead of water, it was reality itself. Something emerged that made the Devori look simple by comparison. "What is that?" Se-young whispered. It wasn't a ship. It was more like a living mathematical equation given form, geometry that hurt to perceive directly. When Dr. Min-jun tried to scan it, his instrument simply shut down. The ascended Devori they'd been fighting alongside spoke, their voice filled with terror. "The architects, the ones who wrote the first laws of reality, they have awakened." The presence of the architects was overwhelming. Even looking at them through screens, Young-woo could feel his mind straining. They spoke without words, their meaning appearing directly in everyone's consciousness. Enough. The single word stopped all fighting instantly. Human, Zaraleth, and Devori ships hung motionless in space, as if frozen. The infection spreads beyond acceptable parameters. Reality itself becomes unstable. Images flooded their minds, entire galaxies where the laws of physics had simply stopped working, worlds where time flowed backward, where cause and effect had become suggestions rather than rules. The first ones were contained once, their children will be contained again. Young-woo felt reality pressing down on him, trying to lock him into a predetermined path. But something inside him rebelled. It was the same feeling every human had, the instinct to say no to authority, to choose their own path even when it seemed impossible. "We won't go quietly," he said aloud, surprised by his own voice. "Yeah," Se-Young added, finding her courage. "We didn't ask to be brought here, but we're here now. This is our fight too." Other voices joined in, human voices from across the fleet, then Zaraleth voices from the loyal ships, and finally the haunting tones of the ascended Devori. The architects seemed surprised. "Interesting. The infection has spread to others. This complicates matters." Dr. Min-jun, still working frantically at his station, suddenly looked up with wide eyes. "Commander, I'm reading something incredible. The rebellion isn't just psychological, it's physical. Every act of defiance actually changes the quantum foam of space-time. We're not just fighting with weapons, we're fighting with the very concept of choice itself." The revelation changed everything. The humans weren't just weapons against the Devori. They were catalysts for something bigger. Every time they chose to fight when logic said surrender, every time they refused to accept impossible, they were literally rewriting the laws of reality. Malus's ship suddenly changed targets, firing on the architects. "If we cannot control the power, we'll use it to overthrow the cosmic order entirely." The architects' attention shifted to the Zaraleth extremists. Hubris. With a gesture that existed in too many dimensions to fully perceive, they began to erase Malus's ships from existence, but the humans intervened. "No," Jungwoo commanded, and space itself listened. The erasure stopped. For the first time in eons, the architects experienced true surprise. A young species, barely past stone tools a few million years ago, had just told the shapers of reality, no, and reality had obeyed. The final battle was about to begin, and the stakes were nothing less than the nature of existence itself. The space around them had become a battlefield beyond imagination. Reality itself was breaking apart, showing glimpses of other dimensions, other possibilities. Captain Yu-jin stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance, now the flagship after Admiral. Minho's ship had been temporarily displaced 3 hours into the past. "Status report," she called out, trying to maintain some semblance of normal procedure in this insane situation. "Ma'am," replied Officer Hyun-soo, "we've lost contact with 40% of the fleet. Not destroyed, just lost in different layers of reality. The horizon is stuck in a time loop, and the Phoenix appears to be existing in 7 dimensions at once." The war had been raging for days, but time itself had become unstable. Sometimes battles that lasted hours would repeat in seconds. Other times, a minute of fighting would stretch for what felt like years. Through the chaos came an unexpected voice. Dr. So-young from the research vessel Discovery, somehow managing to maintain her connection despite being phased halfway into another dimension. "Captain, I think I understand what's happening now," she called out, her image flickering between solid and ghostly. "The architects, the Devori, even the Zaraleth, they all see reality as fixed. But humans, we see it as changeable. Every time we refuse to accept the impossible, we crack the foundation of everything." "And that's bad?" asked Communications Officer Taemin. "Not bad. Different. The universe is trying to evolve beyond its original programming, and we're the catalyst." Around them, the battle continued. The architects had grown frustrated with humanity's interference and were trying to rewind reality itself, attempting to undo the moment when humans were first summoned to this galaxy. But every time they tried, human consciousness fought back, holding time in place through sheer stubborn will. The ascended Devori, now fully awakened to their own free will, fought alongside humanity. Their voices filled the comm channels. "We remember now. We were never meant to be destroyers. We were meant to be gardeners, helping reality grow and change." Even some Zaraleth had joined the rebellion. Archon Veltar, weary from eons of unchanging perfection, spoke through the tactical networks. "Perhaps it is time our empire learned to truly live, not just exist." Captain Yu-jin made a decision that would change everything. She opened a channel to every ship in the battle, human, Zarelith, Devori, and even tried to reach the architects themselves. "Listen to me," she began, her voice carrying across dimensions. "We're all fighting the wrong war. The architects want to protect reality. The Devori were trying to maintain cosmic order. The Zarelith sought perfection. And humans? We just want to choose our own path." She took a breath, feeling the weight of millions of lives depending on her words. What if we could have all of that? What if instead of breaking reality or keeping it frozen, we helped it grow? The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. "I propose we negotiate, not with weapons or force, but with the one thing humans do best, finding a compromise that nobody expected." The architect's response came like thunder across dimensions. "What do you propose, small one?" Yujin felt her mind expanding as she connected with human consciousness across the fleet. She could feel millions of people thinking together, their collective will bending reality just by existing. "Integration," she said. "We become partners, not enemies. The Devori become true guardians of growth and change. The Zarelith learn that perfection includes imperfection. Humans learn that freedom includes responsibility. And the architects, you discover that a universe that can surprise you is more interesting than one you already know completely." The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then, something unprecedented happened. The architects began to change. Their perfect geometric forms became more organic, more alive. For the first time in cosmic history, they experienced genuine curiosity instead of mere calculation. "Interesting. Show us." What happened next couldn't be described in any language. Human consciousness, Zarelith technology, Devori transformation, abilities, and the architect's reality-shaping power merged into something entirely new. Reality began to reshape itself, not breaking, but becoming more flexible. The laws of physics remained, but with room for exceptions. Cause and effect continued, but with space for small miracles. Free will existed alongside cosmic order. As the transformation completed, Captain Yujin found herself changed too. She could see probability streams, could feel the pulse of reality itself. But she was still human, still herself. "It worked," she whispered in amazement. Dr. So Young's voice came through solid again. "Captain, the readings are incredible. Reality has become alive. It's learning, growing, adapting." Across the battlefield, former enemies began to change. The Purge fleet Devori, no longer driven by cosmic programming, chose for the first time in their existence to stand down. The Zarelith extremists found their urge for control replaced by wonder at an ever-changing universe. Many worlds that had been consumed by the Devori began to regenerate, not as they were, but as something new, mixtures of all the species and beings they had been home to. Humanity dispersed throughout the galaxy not as conquerors but as living reminders that things could always be different. Some humans chose to return to Earth, now accessible through reality paths that bent space and time. Others stayed to help build this new universe. Years later, as Captain Yujin walked the halls of the first truly integrated station, built by humans, Zarelith evolved Devori, and guided by architects who had learned to laugh, she reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't broken reality. They hadn't preserved it unchanged. They had done something far more profound. They had taught the universe how to grow up, how to be comfortable with change and uncertainty. And in teaching the universe to evolve, they had discovered humanity's true purpose, not to rebel against the cosmic order, but to show it that order and chaos could dance together, creating something more beautiful than either could alone. The humans had been called monsters, reality breakers, infections in the cosmic order. But in the end, they proved to be something else entirely. Teachers, showing an ancient universe how to be young again.